Hello and welcome to the third 2014 webinar for GeoModeller software demonstrations. Thanks for joining us today. It's marvellous that you're all here. I would like to just begin today by saying the talk is about Introduction to Inversion of Geophysical Datasets in GeoModeller. We're going to have a combination of a PowerPoint. We're going to go through the wizard and then we're going to look at some results of some inversion runs. And so today, if we can proceed, I'm going to mute you all, and that will be for the purpose of getting through the content, but you can leave some comments on the chat line, and when at the end of today's proceedings I can answer those, or we can proceed on to the Q&A forum. So what's the purpose of performing geophysical inversions, and why is it necessary to adopt the type of approach that we do in GeoModeller, which is a litho-constrained stochastic inversion? What's the point of considering non-uniqueness and multiple models? So the purpose of inversion is that from a given 3D geology model we can calculate a geophysical potential field, for example gravity, magnetics or full tensor gradiometry, and compare it to observed data. But what if the calculated and the observed responses don't agree? Then we can try to infer geology from geophysical observations. That means doing the inverse of the previous process. But unfortunately this process isn't unique. There are always variations to a 3D geological model that can be built. And so if we're honest with ourselves as geologists, we know that we can always interpret things, our observed data in slightly different ways, and we know that there's always an error of margin to every dip and stripe direction that we take. And so in the geology alone we can build the model in slightly different ways and still honour the data, but there are still more geological models that can reproduce the observed potential field data. And so if we were to return a single optimal model solution to an inversion problem, this actually wouldn't be very useful. This would be a deterministic approach. So in GeoModeller, the type of approach taken is a Bayesian one, which employs a Markov chain Monte Carlo loop. And this enables us to do a statistical distillation of all plausible model solutions, and that would give us a lot more information. Here's a flowchart of what happens in a very simplistic way. We start by loading a geological and a property model, and then a small change is made to that model, and which is called our new proposal or our new model. And then we check if that's a suitable change to have made by checking against our geology geometry constraints. If it passes, we go on and proceed to forward modelling. If it doesn't, then we fail the model and it may or may not be kept. Then we go around the loop again to make another voxel change and then create another proposed model. All the while slightly modified. This is the perturbation compared to the initial or the reference model. So just to proceed now, another way to graphically show what we're speaking about here when we're doing an inversion is that we're trying to discover geological uncertainty that still honours all the independent data sets. So here in green space are all the models which are supported by geological observations, or in red space all the models that are supported by magnetic observations, and in blue space all the models that are supported by gravity observations. So ideally what we're after is to begin to find where the sweet spot or the overlap zone of all independent data sets lies, and explore that space and see how many different models are still fitting. So to begin with, as a geologist, we may have a favourite built geological model that we believe in because it fits all the data, but we have to acknowledge that there may be some other answers that are more appropriate because they're fitting with the magnetics and the gravity as well. So beginning at your initial model, the process of inversion drives us down to a convergence point where we are in the overlap zone between the independent data sets. This is actually, it happens quite quickly to get to the point of convergence with the misfit being driven down. When we're in this zone, we continue. Inversion doesn't stop. It continues to perturb the model and find all the different models which are acceptable within this space. At the end, after a certain number of iterations are run and that we're beyond the convergence, we are in a situation where we're ready to create the likelihood statistics from all the kept models. So our case study today is from southeastern Australia. It's a zone called the Bet area. It's early Paleozoic, metamorphic and intrusive terrain. This is built by Geoscience Australia and Geoscience Victoria, and just at the end of the PowerPoint I'll show you some acknowledgements for those workers. So the model itself is 33 kilometres by 57 kilometres by 8 kilometres in depth, and what's perhaps something to note is that the newer volcanics in this region are obscuring the view to the granite intrusives, and also they're obscuring the trace of outcropping Avoca Fault, which lies north-south in this zone. So moving from the smooth geology model, we now know that we need to work in a voxel model or a discretized state of that geology, and we do this in GeoModeller because we know we have to enable the computational responses to occur, and we also need to set up our 3D grid for the inversion outcomes. And so now we can have a little think about the ways that we're going to perturb the model. And here's a movie showing the plan view of the Bet geological model. And you can see what's happening is there's a cell change, and geometry is being changed at a frontier boundary because of that cell change. So this movie has been captured during inversions, which total 10 million iterations. And there's been a capture at so many iterations, and in fact every 20,000 iterations. And this is the way we are perturbing the model in alternate geology models. And likewise you can see the same thing in the 2D section. Note that there's an expression here whereby the Avoca Fault is being accounted for without actually having a trace of the fault, as we could have in the smooth geology, but it's being accounted for because you have a juxtaposition of the basement units, and that's how it's handled. Okay. So I just wanted to acknowledge that in GeoModeller we can build our smooth geological model by honouring and obeying the constraints which are our primary geological data, contacts, dip and strike data, the constraints of the geological stratigraphic pile, and also the fault network. But when we move away from that space, from having a smooth geological model of implicit surfaces, we're moving now into discretization of that model. And so we need to set up other rules or constraints by which we're going to allow geometry to modify by a different set of rules. And so we need to set up user-supplied statistical laws for morphology changes. We need to invoke fixed cells, and we need to preserve stratigraphic Younging order if that's appropriate. And so these types of ways are available to us in GeoModeller. So the first of these is to say that we can have something called volume ratio. And this sets up the way by which we can expand or extract or contract a volume such as a granite, and you can see here a spherical shape is being allowed to go up or down by 60%. The second type of geological geometry constraint which can be set is commonality by volume, and this is literally to talk about the overlap zone. So if you make a position shift of a geological unit. It can be allowed if you set the overlap zone of what it needs to comply with as it makes the modification. A third possibility of setting a rule is called shape ratio or a surface ratio, and this is referring to the shape of the formation in the new proposal divided by the shape of the geological unit in the reference or the initial model. And here we're talking about an index of shape where it's a function of a square root of the surface area divided by the cube root of the volume. And as we know, a sphere could have a very efficient surface area to volume ratio and a low index number, but when you begin to deform that sphere, you begin to have a greater ratio of surface area to volume. A fourth way that we can set up some rules for geology geometry is to actually fix cells. So here is one which shows the bounds of selecting some cells which we don't want to allow them to move or to change identity during the inversion run. So they may be surface cells, or they may be cells that interact or are along the trace of a drill hole, and these can be set to as unchanging. And finally, one to mention is that we can decide to set a provision called preserve the stratigraphic Younging order. And what this means is, and it's demonstrated in just a simple 2-unit geological model, with this particular constraint not set, I'm running a movie now, it's showing that the younger brown units are allowed to creep underneath the older green units. And this may be quite valid if you know the geology of your area, if you know that there could be thrust faulting or reasons for facies changes that would allow this type of thing, then that's fine. You don't need to turn it on. But if you do have a reason to always be aware that there is no possibility for the younger unit creeping underneath the older unit, then it's very very powerful to be able to switch this on, and you'll notice that the perturbations during inversion now are not allowing at any time for the brown to creep below the green unit. So just to summarise our key considerations when we're setting up an inversion in GeoModeller, we're setting the model resolution, we're setting the number of iterations. The other thing we need, and we've just been through, is to understand that we need to set realistic constraints on geometry changes that are allowed to happen in the new model proposals as we're perturbing geology during inversion. Also, we need to have put a lot of time and thought into setting up our rock property distributions based on each lithology. And finally, preparing the geophysical grids and setting up the precisions of those surveys. With BetBet, and returning to this case study now, I would like to say that as the iterations proceed from left to right, the misfit against the geophysics falls, and that is a fact of the loop keeping the better models and rejecting the models that make a worse prediction compared to the last. And so, as you see, the misfit will drive down to a point where the solution is converging, and beyond that you typically would see a fairly flat lying misfit curve. It's literally bouncing around as a factor of the precision that you've set on your observed geophysics grids. And the user is able to set a burn-in point, in this case 3 million iterations and beyond, is acknowledged by the user as a point whereby those models after the 3 million iteration point are valid models, all to be kept and considered in the distillation of the statistics. here are the grids. You can see the left-hand side is the GZZ for the Bet region observed, and on the right-hand side the model grid. And this is the model grid for the proposal which was given at the 2 million iteration point. You can see it's a reasonably good fit. It's been able to predict quite well some of the main features of the gravity anomaly, but it does fall short in some respects. And note that it's at the 2 million iteration point, so this is just prior to the user-defined burn-in point of 3 million iterations. So hereafter the models are all acceptable, but this actually wasn't an acceptable model. Likewise, we can show you the TMI, and on the left-hand side is the observed TMI, on the right-hand side the model TMI for the point at the 2 million iteration level. And so again, main features are being honoured quite well, but this model actually wasn't one that was kept. And so now, if we can imagine, we have the equivalent of 7 million models. All those kept after burn-in, after 3 million iterations, through to the very end of iterations at 10 million. All of those were kept and distilled. So now we're returning something of a show of the geological uncertainty. So here is a cross-section, west to east, through the Bet model. The first one up the top here, the initial geology model, is literally our discretized geology model, and it's equivalent to our reference or our initial geology model. So this was at the beginning. And that compares then to the posterior model, beyond inversion, where it's returning the most probable based on distillation of all those 7 million models between 3 million and 10 million iterations. So you can see what's been returned as a result of being driven by the geophysics. This granite here, you can tell, has gone through a very big drive towards greater volume. And so this is the Elston granite, quite an interesting outcome in itself. The third image down, this is what we call most probable thresholded at, in this case, 80% confidence limits. And what it's about here is that every cell which spent most of its time, or greater than 80% of its time, as, let's say, Ulster granite, will come out in this red colour. But in the white zone is anything that failed the 80% confidence limit test. In other words, it's on the boundary zone, and the certainty of having Ulster granite located here is less, and so it's shown up in white. And if you change the most probable threshold number as a user, you can set this to anything you like. If you want to see a high degree of confidence, you might ask it for 90% confidence limits. You'll find that the zone of uncertainty in white gets wider. And the fourth image here is just expressed in terms of one unit, the Dajajrang supergroup, and what here is shown is a sliding scale of white through black, where white is 100% probability of seeing the occurrence of this supergroup. And you can see that here it's quite clearly high certainty, going through to almost no certainty at all, and black is 0% probability of finding this unit located in this other area. So just as a reminder, these images are just 2D images of what is a 3D result, because these are all available to us as voxets. And also, I just wanted to point out that there's a confirmation here through the inversion process. We've been able to see that there is structural orientation which is confirming the location of the Avoca fault here as a westerly dipping structure. I want to say something about the concept of prior only, and this is one phase of the progressive workflow which is undertaken during inversion, and it allows you to check the effects of the geology geometry constraints which you have set in terms of the limit which could be explored for each geology unit. before you actually go off and reference the geophysics. This is a very important step because, and you can now appreciate from the Elston granite, I'll just return to that slide, compared to the reference geology model, which had this amount of Elston granite, you can see that it's been able to respond to and be driven to a much larger volume by the geophysics, but you needed to check that in fact it was given the freedom to do so, because no amount of driving by the geophysics will allow that shape to grow if your geological constraints are too tight and won't physically allow it to grow. In summary of what we've said so far in the PowerPoint today, the features of litho-constrained stochastic inversion in GeoModeller are that it operates fully in 3D. It operates directly on an initial or a reference geological model. It tackles geological uncertainty and allows for geophysical data uncertainty in testing and refining the geology geometries and the rock properties. Also, you can use it on gravity, magnetics, or both jointly. And so now I'd like to move into our demonstration today and have a look at the graphical user interface. We're going to pay a bit of attention particularly to some workflows which include commencing from an external lithology box set. I'm going to show you how to set up an inversion with either a single or a joint geophysical fields to compute. We're going to think about the precisions for each observed grid, which contributes to modelling uncertainty. We're going to just touch on reviewing the probability distribution functions and how these are used in many ways in the inversion workflow. And we're going to set up those geology geometry constraints and of course set up the number of iterations and execute the run. So just moving now into GeoModeller. Under the geophysics menu, you will have been familiar with seeing that you've set up the physical properties table already. So that's something we covered in the webinar of February, the forward modelling. And so you will have set values per unit and set the total field, etc. Moving into the wizard, you'll see it's available to us under the geophysics menu. Inversion wizard. So the first thing to notice that on the first page we're able to select a vox set as the input to the inversion run, and this is where we could browse to that a lithology box set from a model that actually may not have been built in GeoModeller. It may have been built in, say, GoCAD or another source software. And what we do is we browse to the grid. It will have a .vo extension, in this case a GoCAD vox set. The first thing to do then is to scan that file and so that the geology identifiers come out against the model formations. And so it knows those now, and we can proceed. Except that I will actually return to just the current model and work from GeoModeller itself. So this is just demonstration, and I'll take you through. The next page of the wizard shows us that we can set up the voxel extents. So if you can see, I'm going to set some preferred numbers, which is dividing up into our discretization scheme. Now 33 cells by 57 cells by 110 cells in the Z direction totals around about 200,000 cells. So this is a fairly low resolution run, but at least I'm showing you the idea, and it is good to work in low resolution before moving into your final runs in much higher resolution. So that's the first thing to set. The next thing to set and for this case study, we have two grids available, which I'm going to show you. The GZZ is the first one we're going to browse to. This one's been upward continued for 500 metres, and it's the first vertical derivative. For the modelling uncertainty, this is suggested to me 0.5 milligauss is, sorry, Ertvoss is a decent value here, I think, which applies. The next thing to do is decide on the observation surface. In this case, we're going to set the drape off the terrain at 500 metres to match what the observed grid it has been upward continued to be. And finally, we're going to set an interpolation value for the vertical sampling interval, and this will just help us to be able to capture the topography in a good level of resolution, which is quite important, as a lot of the signal is coming from the close surface. So once that one's set, we can go now and join with it, because we are performing and setting up a joint inversion. We'll now go and browse and find the TMI grid. This one is also here. It's also upward continued for 500 metres. And this one has less uncertainty. The precision of this grid I'm going to set at 0.2 nanoteslas. Again, the clearance from the topography is at 500 metres, and vertical sampling interval to be the same. So that's finished with this page, and we can proceed on. It does give you a memory requirement based on the most memory intensive part of this process is in interpolating the different discretized levels of the digital elevation model. And so we can now move on. Now this page is all about the properties, and the rock properties are feeding directly from those that are being set in the properties table. But you can review them here, and you can certainly double click on these to remind yourself about the probability distribution set for each unit. Likewise, you can review what was the total field, and you can use the IGRF calculator if you need to adjust the date of the survey or anything to do with the field. Otherwise, there's nothing to do here, as it feeds directly off the properties table. On this page, we were able to begin to set up the geology geometry constraints, and because I'm actually going to run it as if we're doing an inversion, I would leave the shared settings as the default numbers, and this is talking about the probability of a property change only at 50%. That means that when we're going to perturb the model, we're going to make one change to a cell. Are we going to change its geology geometry or its geology identification, or are we going to change a property relating to that cell? And in this case, we'll do a 50-50% chance of making one geology change or a property change. And we're going to allow property change on fixed cells, and we're also going to set this local property difference check to on as a recommended setting. The next thing to do is to set some of those fixed cells we talked about. So, for instance, if you want to change anything that's within the surface layer, or rather to fix it, you tick it on at this point. Another thing to do is to tick on any drill holes that you have available as a trace, and at the moment you need to browse to find a CSV file, but soon in GeoModeller 14 you'll be able to tick on the drill hole or the well that you would like to have included those traces of those cells to be fixed. It will be a lot easier, but at the moment it needs to be set up in a CSV file. And moving into two tests I'm going to turn on for the geology geometry constraints. One is going to be the commonality, which you can remember as the overlap. It's a physical position shift. And if you can see that I've done a mouse wave over this, you can see that I've actually got an ability to be helped along with the choice of my numbers here. There are 3 numbers to set, and mostly we would just change that first one. It's good to have a lot of freedom, so I would tend to go with something like 2, 100. And I'm just going to now look briefly what that means. This is a very interesting type of probability distribution function. It's very useful because what it's really saying is it's a one-sided distribution where it virtually decays from 100% probability to down to nothing. And this is good for if you have a high degree of confidence in your first built or your reference geology model, then you can imagine that any change away from that is sort of becoming less likely compared to the original. And so this is why this probability distribution function works quite well in this sense. So the idea here, I said I'd like to loosen off the commonality constraint. I'm going to put 2 in here, and it's a matter of going through each lithology in turn and typing it to the desired Weibull number. In this case I'm choosing 2 all the way through, but I won't proceed too much further because it does take time and concentration to really set these settings well. It's a very careful process, so I won't proceed. The shape ratio is the next one that I would recommend that you use. It's about adding roughness to your shape or not. Typically, not too much roughness is a good thing, and therefore I would recommend what is the default value here, 1.05, which allows a moderate amount of variation away from the reference model. So again, I recommend that one. Today we're not going to go on too long, but that you can read each of these menus. The pop-ups are very helpful, and I recommend you go through these in a lot of detail together with the reference manual in GeoModeller. So the final thing on this page is to set up what's called the Younging order. And I'd like to leave out all of the intrusive bodies and not have them locked down anywhere, but I would like to include the stratigraphic layering just of the neovolcanics, the Cenozoic, the Castlemaine group and the Sanana group, because each of these are realistically only ever going to lie one above the other. And so the trick is to touch the youngest one first and then say this is always above the other lithologies. So the neovolcanics always has to be above the Cenozoic and above Castlemaine and above St Arnaud. And then you can proceed to the next one down the order and also tick the things that apply for this, so that the early Cenozoic has to always stay above Castlemaine and above St Arnaud group, and likewise Castlemaine group to be switched on for always remaining above St Arnaud, and then that's finished. That's all that's needed, and we can review that list. Just the 4 stratigraphic units in order, and the intrusives have freedom to move. This page of the wizard is about setting the number of iterations, which, as I said before, our discretization scheme implies 200,000 cells. So I would say at a minimum you need to be looking at doing 10 times that number of iterations. So at least 2 million iterations, probably more like 5 to 10 million iterations, so that each cell can be visited enough times to get a true exploration of a large number of proposals. I'm going to set 10 million. Also, it's necessary to realize that even though we've set up the constraints for the geology geometry tests on the last page, this is where we actually turn them on. So they need to be switched on here. The other thing I'll say about shape ratio test is that you need to consider the shape that goes beyond and outside of the model, so that comes above the topography surface and goes to the outside. That's because if you're thinking of a sphere that's pushed up against the edge of the model or to the top of the topography, you want to think about the test for this as being a full shape. So it's useful to include as well. The geophysical criteria, it's necessary to turn this one off only when you're doing prior only, and that would be a good thing to do within your workflow. But let's say this time we're setting off an actual inversion run. And so the last one is about setting up whether you're going to have an execution of the task by interactive mode or batch mode. I would typically work in interactive, but batch mode allows you to keep job files and repeat and work in batch, something that users can have the choice of. Also notice that the number of cores is recognized by the interface, and you can allocate the tasks to different numbers of cores, and you can also multi-thread this. So that's the finish of the wizard. The finish button will send off the job to run as an inversion. I'm going to cancel now because we're going to proceed directly to see the results that have been run yesterday and previous days before. So when you do finish, that takes a number of hours or a number of days, depending of course on the resolution of the run. So that's a question in itself. The first thing that comes available to you is that you see that this evolution curve with the misfit falling away, and you can actually watch this happen during inversion, and so you'll know what stage you're up to. The idea here is to capture, as a user, you need to decide on your burn-in point, and it's typically where the flat curve is really becoming consistent. This is perhaps not the best example that I could have shown, but nonetheless, we can imagine at about 8 to 9 million iterations, and you can zoom in on that area. 8 to 9 million iterations is where a useful burn-in point is, and that the models beyond that point could be reliably kept and analysed in a statistical distillation. The threshold number is to do with what confidence limits you want to see when you're analysing geological uncertainty. So you can set these up and you can repeat these over and over for different threshold limits. So for instance, I may want to do another one here and summarise the statistics based on a threshold of 75% confidence limits. Now again, I'm not going to run this one because all it does is send off a file, thinks about it for up to 5 minutes, because it's quite a process to distill statistically all of those values. What I am next going to do though is to show you that where the grids live, and that you can directly import on completion of the inversion. So if you go to grids and meshes, import, and then geophysical results, you can see a large number of runs here which have been already run and saved, and the last one is case number 8, and it's a joint inversion, run 1. So what we can do now is ask for that one to be imported, and it will pop into the list. It's thinking about it. It takes a little minute, and then they're going to be available to us amongst the grids and meshes. So what you can see here on the screen now is the smooth geology model is available to us, and then I can show you where we actually migrated from the smooth geology into the block model or the lithology box set. So we'll do that now. But in the meantime, our case 8 has been imported into our grids and meshes, so we can view those results now. They're available to us. First thing to do though is I'm quite interested to show you and to demonstrate the benefits of doing a prior only run. So just to pick a section on which to look at those, and also to see a previous case. So case 5, let's pull up the super summary stats for that one. So what I'd like to do is just to move to another section where I can demonstrate some prior only run results quite clearly. And so what we're going to look at is the granite. Let me just show you the stratigraphic pile for a moment. So the Natyallik granite outer is this red body up here in the north of the project area. And as defined, we can hide it in the smooth geology model, that is, and just bring back that single unit on its own. Here it is here. And here it is in cross-section as well. So this section, if I can just show you the model polygons, it's just actually at the southernmost tip of where that unit lies. So let's have a look at displaying just the lines for this section of the model. And now we're going to have a look at the results of a previous run, which is case 5 prior only. Let's look at the summary stats for that. And we're going to load the prior only run. And just for the case of looking at that unit on its own. So that's the Natyallik granite outer. Let's have a look at visualizing that first. We'll look at it in 3D, and we'll also look at it on this section here, 59000000. The way it's shown up here, and I should have shown you perhaps how that was presented, under Edit, Colors and Clips, you can create a curve for yourself. The lookup table was a grayscale, and what we've done is we've faded out from white to black. The case whereby if there's a possibility of having this unit show up because it's being explored in the model perturbations, if there's any chance that it's being explored, then pretty much it's shown in white through grey. At zero possibility that it's being explored, it goes to black. And that's why I've modified slightly the transformation of that curve. And so what we can see is that we're happy actually with the case that that it has explored a much larger area than the physical extent of the model in its current state, and that is a good thing. We want to be able to expand that granite a lot, so you can see that both in 2D and in 3D. And so that's just a simple look at one of the results of the prior only case. The next thing I'd like to do is to move on actually to have a look at that case 8, the joint inversion that we ran a mock-up of today, and choose one of the distillations. Any one is fine. And we're going to now think about the results that have come out. So you can see there's a lot of different attributes to the one 3D mesh that's available to us. But the first thing to do, now that we've imported them into the grids and meshes, that's fine. But let's also return and see how they looked in, actually I have it up here. So here's the Results Explorer, and the thing to check is that the final grids after inversion, we need to do a comparison of the observed versus the final computed grids, and this is a very important thing, of course, because we hope that inversion has driven itself well to a point of a very high degree of matching. So here in the magnetics you can see the main features. Again, it's a low resolution run, but the main features of the anomaly are met in the computed compared to the observed. The range is very, very decent, and the thing I'm also looking for is that there's the misfit, which is the expression of the observed minus the computed. It's a very matte colour. It's very much close to zero. It's in that constant green. Apart from down in the south where we've done some not such a good job here. So on the whole, though, we're happy that inversion has, in this particular run that I've done for demonstration, has worked quite well. Now let's proceed and look at the rock properties of a posterior model in 3D. So what have we got? Let's hide these other meshes and start again. I'll hide the smooth geology. What we can do now is go to the grids and meshes and pick up within this statistical distillation of case 8, we're going to have a look at the mean susceptibilities between of all of our kept models. Let's have a look at that one and visualize it in 3D. What's come up here is a reasonable looking color stretch, but we can improve on that as well. So what I'd like to do probably is change it to histogram equalized and apply that change. Now what we're looking at is the mean susceptibilities inside the 3D model, which is a distillation of the best results throughout the inversion run after burn-in and prior to the end of iterations. We can do a couple of things here. We can look at clipping that box set and seeing what it looks like through the volume of that box set. Another thing that's important to do is check out the histogram. So you can see here this is all combined, all units combined, but we can pick out one at a time. So let's look at the Natty Yallock granite outer. You see it's a good sort of normal, log normal distribution, which is typical of mag susceptibilities. But also this is the posterior model outcome, and so what's interesting is to compare it with that which was said in the original physical properties table. So let's look at that now. So here is the equivalent curve in the original or initial model. You can see that originally we had a mean of 0.012 SI units, but the new mean in the posterior model is 0.016. So there has been an increase in the mean of SI units of the mag susceptibility. So that's an interesting outcome. Not too different, but it has been a slight shift there. We could have another look at another one. And I think what could be interesting is to look at the Earlston. So again, returning to this plot of the posterior model, we look at the Earlston granite. This is a little more interesting because it's actually found a dual bimodal population, and if we compare to our original physical properties table here for the same Earlston granite, you can see that in the original probability distribution law it was only monomodal with a mean of 0.0002. So things have changed. The geophysics have driven this change, and they would rather tend to tell us that the Earlston granite would seem to have a bimodal population. So that is also an interesting outcome of having done this geophysical inversion on both properties and geology geometries. So moving on, what I'd now like to check and have a look at is the volumetric changes compared to the units in the reference model compared to the posterior model. So now let's hide all of our meshes and start to look at another one. I'm going to close the summary stats from case 8, and this time I'm going to open the final and the initial. Now these are Vox sets which record the lithology, density and susceptibility in the final versus the last run of the inversion compared to the initial model. So let's look at the lithology here. Up the top I'm going to put the final posterior model. I'm going to exclude geology that's above topo, and now I'm also going to pull out the initial lithology Vox set, also showing the histogram of that and hiding the above topo units. And I'm finding again an interesting comparison in doing this here. So what we can see on the left hand side is that the bar chart is showing us the percentage of the model that that unit accommodates. So you can see this is the posterior model up the top. In the posterior model, the basement unit was representing 55% of the model, but in the initial, the basement unit was counting for 62% of the model. That means that the top to basement has actually shrunk down to deeper depths, and thereby suggesting inversion has driven a less amount of volume of basement in the posterior model. Another thing to notice is the Elston granite in the posterior model represents up to almost 3% of the model, but in the initial model it only represented up to 1.2 or just over 1.2% of the model. So the Elston granite has expanded, and likewise the Natty Yallock outer has expanded from 4% to 6%, but the basement has shrunk in its volume. And the actual volumetric quantities of these specified in cubic meters. So these are very powerful outcomes of inversion, and they're very good to be able to compare them in this way. The final thing I might just look at whilst we have time is to have a look at that most probable thresholded geology. And we can just do that quickly from case 8, from any one of our compiled statistics. Let's go for 95% thresholded and have a look at most probable in 3D. You'll find this may happen sometime. What's happened is that the edit colours and clips needs to be changed to include lithology, and because it's not automatically recognising that, the way to do it is to right click on most probable and go to properties and change the alias to lithology, and then it should automatically pick up the colour chart for the stratigraphic table. So let's just load that again. This time we're now picking up the correct colours of the lithology table. This is most probable. I actually meant to pick up most probable thresholded. So let's try that one now. Checking again that lithology is the alias in the properties of this attribute, and now showing it in 3D. So just to remind ourselves what we're expecting to see here, this is an expression of geological uncertainty, and you can see there are gaps here between the boundary zones between units, and that's what might be expected. These are the areas where there's lesser confidence in what the geology type is. So that's interesting. And of course these can be expressed on any section at a time as well. So moving on to being able to compute new fields. And this allows you to do such things as make a new, let's say you want to make a 3D residual grid. That could be a useful thing. You could perform it using the 3D calculator, mesh calculator. Another thing you can do is make a movie, and that's available here below. 3D geophysics, create movies from inversion. So what you need to do here is choose the section on which you want to get the movie to appear or to be formed from. Choose a section, and then you need to choose the frame speed and so forth. There's also scale options and color schemes and so forth. So there's a bit here to look into when you're deciding to create a movie from your inversion. Another thing I'd like to say is that all the results are in the Results Explorer. So if you did go to that page, everything is here stored on the left-hand side. So for our Case 8, you can see that if you expand this area, you get to see a lot of information, right down to physical properties, densities, susceptibilities per unit. You can see things about the observed grids, the clearance, the sampling interval for elevation. You can see a lot of things about the inversion controls, including the advanced parameters and things like commonality and volume ratio. You can check which ones were turned on. So there's a lot of stored information here. What is an important thing to do is to bring back the geology into your model that you're building and to revise the model on the experience of the inversion results. And the way to do that is to choose the ability to, say, export surface shells. In this way, you can take out a CSV file, which becomes an import option so that you can bring in and constrain a geological unit again post-inversion. Otherwise, you have the ability to restart an inversion based on the most probable geology, so you can commence again and always be working in lithology Vox sets. That's also a possibility. So just to sum up on today's events, I would like to return to our PowerPoint. I think I have just one more thing to say, that we've been through our analysis of results. I was going to particularly pay attention to the acknowledgements of those workers who did put together the Bet case study, those from Geoscience Australia and Geoscience Victoria, with particular acknowledgement to Richard Lane and Phil McInerney for this work also. And what next is that this webinar will be recorded and we'll be able to put it up on YouTube very shortly. And if you have question and answers, and I could perhaps, you can talk amongst yourself, or we can engage that process, please do visit our Google group forum. It's a great way to keep in touch. Also, perhaps at this stage you feel you would like to try some of these things yourself, please feel free to contact us and take a 4-week free evaluation license for GeoModeller software. I'd also like to say that there's a lot more available in terms of support, and you will find a large manual is available with the software here, or alternatively in the installation direction. There is a manual, Forward Modelling and Inversion with 3D GeoModeller. It's a very extensive document, and it allows you to go through in much more detail and have a reference or to a lot of the processes which are quite involved and which I may have skimmed over today. So that is available. Also, I draw your attention under the help menu also to tutorial E, which is about forward and inverse modelling of potential field data. It doesn't work on this case study, but it's another one, a more simple one actually, and I would recommend that you go in there and have a look at that tutorial. It does run through similar things that we touched on today. And so finally, in summing up, and to say thank you for joining us today, I wanted to first of all acknowledge the fantastic work on this BET case study by others at Geoscience Australia and Geoscience Victoria, and particularly also to acknowledge the expert methodology advice and the implementation of the inversion modules into GeoModeller by people such as Richard Lane and Phil McInerney. And finally, to finish up today, you may be asking what's next. There will be advertised webinars coming up for the next few months, so please stay tuned. And if you have any questions after today's webinar, I please would encourage you to go to our Google group forum, where we will have an open chat room, and I will certainly be looking out for any questions there which I could answer, or I could pass on to another expert in the field. Also, if you are thinking that you would like to try the inversion modules in GeoModeller, you'd be more than welcome to take a 4-week free evaluation license. And you'll see on the screen here now the directions to do that, or to email me as well, helen@intrepid-geophysics.com. So for today, I'd like to finish it there, and I thank you so much for joining, and I welcome to have some feedback. So I think we've run over time and there won't be time for questions, but I do thank you for today.